You know that question people ask at parties? So what do you do? Most people have an answer, one clear thing, a label that makes sense. But some people hesitate, not because they're lost, because they're multiple things and none of them feel like the whole story. You might be a designer who reads about neuroscience, a teacher who codes on weekends, a marketer who's weirdly into philosophy and permaculture and narrative structure. And when you try to explain this, people smile, politely. But you can tell they're a little confused, maybe even a little concerned, because we're taught that depth comes from focus, that mastery means saying no, that if you're interested in too many things, you're probably just distracted. Stay with me. Because what if the opposite is true? What if the way you're built, the way your brain reaches across fields and connects things that don't obviously belong together, isn't a flaw in your focus? What if it's actually preparation for a future most people aren't even designed to see yet? Let's start with what society has trained us to value. The T-shaped person. Deep expertise in one thing. A little bit of breadth for context. Enough to collaborate, but not so much that you lose your edge. This worked. For decades, it worked. Specialize. Go deep. Build a career on being the person who knows that one thing better than anyone else. And if that felt natural to you, great. You thrived. But for others, that model felt like suffocation. Because your brain doesn't want to go infinitely deep into one narrow thing. It wants to explore, to connect, to see patterns across domains that other people miss because they're too zoomed in. You're not T-shaped, you're M-shaped. Here's what that means. An M-shaped person has depth in multiple areas, not surface-level curiosity, actual competence. Enough to contribute, create, solve problems. But instead of one spike, you have two, or three. And the space between them? That's where the magic happens. Because you don't just know psychology or design, you know how they inform each other. You don't just understand technology or storytelling, you see how one amplifies the other in ways most people can't even articulate. But here's where it gets interesting. Society doesn't know what to do with you yet. Because the systems we live in, schools, job descriptions, LinkedIn profiles, they're all built for people who fit into boxes. One box, one role, one expertise. But the problems we're facing now? They don't fit into boxes. Climate change isn't just a science problem. It's a behavioral problem, a political problem, a storytelling problem. You need people who can move between worlds. AI isn't just a tech issue. It's ethics, creativity, psychology, economics, power. The biggest opportunities right now exist between fields. And most people can't see them because they've been trained not to look sideways. You have. Does this sound familiar? You've probably felt this tension your whole life. The guilt of not committing. The fear that you're scattered. The subtle shame when someone asks what you're really good at and you don't have one clean answer. But that's not the full story. Because what you've actually been doing, whether you realized it or not, is building a cognitive flexibility that most people don't have. When you move between interests, your brain is making connections. It's learning to translate, to see analogies, to borrow solutions from one field and apply them to another. That's not distraction. That's synthesis. And synthesis is one of the rarest, most valuable skills in a world drowning in information but starving for meaning. Here's the part most people miss. M-shaped people don't just know more, they see differently. You're not trying to master everything. You're building a map, a way of navigating complexity that doesn't require you to reduce everything to one dimension. And that's why the future might actually be built for you. Let's be honest. You've probably spent years wondering if something was wrong with you, if you should just pick one thing and commit, if your inability to stay in one lane meant you'd never be great at anything. But what if your shape, this M shape, isn't a lack of discipline? What if it's an adaptation? Because the world is moving toward problems that don't have single domain solutions, toward work that doesn't fit neatly into job titles, toward a kind of creativity that requires you to stand at the intersection and see what everyone else is missing. You're not behind, you're early. Think about it. Where do you feel most alive, most useful? It's probably not when you're doing one isolated thing. It's when you're connecting two things that don't normally touch. When you're translating an idea from one world into another. When someone says, "I never thought about it that way," and you realize, of course they didn't. Because they weren't looking from your angle. That's not a party trick. That's a way of thinking the world is starting to desperately need. So here's the real question. Are you going to keep apologizing for your shape? Keep trying to flatten yourself into a single spike because that's what the resume template expects? Or are you going to start seeing your multiplicity as structure, not chaos? Because the people who are going to build what comes next, they won't be the ones who know one thing perfectly. They'll be the ones who know how to move between worlds, who can speak multiple languages, who can hold complexity without collapsing it into oversimplification. They'll be shaped like you, and maybe it's time you stop treating that like a problem.